Everyone stared at the photo, but no one opened it. The photograph sat on the evidence board for 3 days. Nobody touched it. Nobody questioned it. It was just background, just decoration, just an old family picture pulled from the victim's living room wall. The judge almost dismissed it as sentimental filler. He was ready to move on, ready to call the next witness, ready to keep the trial clean and efficient. But something about the frame bothered him. If you like courtroom stories, where the smallest detail flips the entire case, subscribe now to the Unheard Witness and stay with me. Because sometimes the truth hides behind what everyone thinks is irrelevant. The case seemed straightforward. A wealthy homeowner found unconscious in his study, safe emptied, window forced open. The defendant was the victim's former business partner, recently sued. Public argument weeks before, motive clear. And police found his fingerprints on the study desk, found his car 2 streets away, found security footage of someone in a similar coat entering the property. It lined up neatly, too neatly. The prosecutor presented everything confidently: financial disputes, angry emails, witness testimony about threats. The defense tried to argue coincidence. The judge listened patiently, but the jury's eyes had already settled on the defendant. The old photograph hung on a foam board near the easel, a framed family portrait. The victim smiling beside his wife and teenage daughter. Taken years ago. Introduced to show the home's layout. To establish that the study window was usually closed. No one discussed it again. The judge's gaze returned to it during cross-examination. He couldn't explain why. Maybe boredom. Maybe instinct. The defense attorney questioned the lead detective. See, was anything else disturbed in the study? No. Anything removed from walls? No. The judge glanced at the photograph again. The frame looked slightly warped. Not dramatically, just uneven. He interrupted softly. Detective, when that photo was recovered, was it removed from the wall? The prosecutor looked surprised. It was collected as background context, Your Honor. The detective nodded. It was hanging in the hallway outside the study. Was it examined? A pause. For fingerprints? No. For concealment? The courtroom stilled. The detective blinked. Concealment of what? The judge leaned forward. Was the frame inspected? Silence, because nobody had bothered. The prosecutor shifted. With respect, Your Honor, the photograph is irrelevant. That word again. Irrelevant. The judge disliked that word more each year. Bring it here, he said calmly. The bailiff retrieved it, placed it gently on the evidence table. Dust along the edges. Minor scratch near the top. The judge studied it closely. The back panel didn't sit flush. Tiny gap near the bottom. Was this removed before collection? He asked. The detective shook his head. It was bagged as is. The judge handed it to the bailiff. Open it. The prosecutor objected immediately. Your Honor, this is speculative. The judge didn't raise his voice. Open it. The metal tabs bent back slowly. Cardboard backing lifted, and then something slid down softly onto the table. An envelope. Thin. Unmarked. Every eye locked onto it. The prosecutor froze. The defense leaned forward. The judge didn't touch it immediately. Was this logged? He asked quietly. The detective swallowed. No. The envelope was sealed, aged but intact. The judge allowed gloves. The bailiff opened it carefully. Inside were documents. Not sentimental letters, not family keepsakes, financial transfer forms, signed, stamped, and dated 2 days before the assault. The jury shifted in their seats. The prosecutor stepped closer. These could be unrelated. The judge scanned the top page. It was a profit distribution agreement between the victim and another partner, not the defendant. A silent partner, one never mentioned during trial, one not listed in initial police summary. The defense attorney's voice found new strength. "Who is this third signatory?" The detective hesitated. We were unaware of this agreement." Unaware, because nobody looked behind the frame. The documents showed large sums scheduled for transfer, funds to be rerouted from a joint investment account, the account the defendant was accused of trying to access illegally. But these forms showed authorization by the victim himself. The timeline shifted. The motive weakened. The prosecutor attempted to regain control. Even if these forms exist, they don't negate assault. True, but they changed context. If funds were legally scheduled for transfer, the alleged theft narrative collapsed. The judge flipped another page, handwritten note attached, short, urgent. "If anything happens, check the photograph." Silence consumed the room, because someone anticipated danger. The judge looked up slowly. "Detective, was there any sign the victim feared someone?" "Not toward the defendant," the detective answered. "Toward anyone else?" Another pause. "See, there was mention of tension with an investor. Name requested, reluctantly given, the silent partner, recently removed from executive control, lost millions in market downturn." The defense attorney's eyes widened slightly. "Was he questioned?" "Yes." "Extensively?" A longer pause. "Briefly." The jury noticed that hesitation. The prosecutor's confidence thinned. The judge reviewed the assault report again. The victim had regained consciousness briefly in hospital, or spoke only one word before sedation. "Frame." At the time, doctors thought he meant pain or mental confusion. It was dismissed. The judge felt the weight of oversight pressing down. "Retrieve hospital transcript," he ordered. It was brought forward, confirmed. The word "frame." No follow-up documented. The defense moved for immediate suspension of proceedings pending further investigation. The prosecutor resisted, but the balance had shifted. The judge ordered recess. Hours later, investigators returned. Silent partner had left town the morning after assault. Phone switched off. Financial records showed attempted reversal of the scheduled transfers. Failed because victim never finalized digital confirmation, which meant someone needed physical access. The study window showed forced entry, but the glass pattern suggested breakage from inside. Overlooked detail, because investigators focused on the defendant's proximity. The old photograph had hung directly across from the study door. Easy access point, perfect hiding spot. The silent partner knew the house layout intimately, had attended family events there for years. The defense attorney stood again. "Your Honor, the existence of concealed documents materially alters the case." The judge nodded slowly. He looked at the defendant, a man who had remained silent, while assumptions built around him. "Charges are dismissed without prejudice," the judge announced. Gasps rippled. The prosecutor sat down slowly, deflated. The judge continued. Further investigation required into newly discovered evidence. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed again. But this time, questions were different. Why wasn't the photograph inspected? Why was the note ignored? Why was the hospital statement minimized? Weeks later, the silent partner was located in another state. and attempting to liquidate assets, arrested quietly. Interrogation revealed escalating financial desperation. Confrontation with the victim turned violent. Documents hidden inside the frame in haste. Plan was to retrieve them later, but police arrived too quickly, and nobody looked behind the photo. The defendant returned home quietly. No victory speech, no public celebration, just relief. Reputation still scarred. Trust still fractured, but free. The judge sat alone in chambers that evening, the photograph resting on his desk. He studied the smiling faces in it, ordinary, unaware of what it would one day conceal. He thought about how close he came to ignoring it, how easily relevance is defined by assumption, how often background details are dismissed. He issued new procedural guidance the following week. All physical evidence to be fully examined. Frames opened, containers inspected. Nothing presumed decorative. Because justice doesn't just live in testimony. It lives in attention, in curiosity, in the willingness to look behind what everyone else walks past. The old photograph returned to evidence storage, not as decoration, but as reminder that sometimes the most important truth isn't hanging in plain sight. It's hidden just behind it.